Have you ever felt like something was meant to happen, but couldn't explain why? What if I told you that these so-called coincidences are not accidents, but previews of your own future, already in motion? Neville Goddard didn't believe in chance. He believed in revelation. Behind every random event is a hidden message, a whisper from your future self. These moments are clues from the universe, coded in time, waiting for your awareness to decode them. In this video, we'll uncover the deeper mechanics behind these mysterious alignments. You'll discover how to read the signs, claim your destiny, and understand how every coincidence is your future revealing itself to you. Stay with me. This might change the way you see everything. You walk into a bookstore and a single book falls at your feet. A stranger says something that mirrors the exact thought you had this morning. A song plays just as you think of someone you haven't seen in years. Most brush these off. Just a coincidence, they say. But what if it's not? What if these aren't accidents but messages, deliberate and personal signposts on the road of your destiny? Neville Goddard taught that reality is not a sequence of random happenings, but a mirror reflecting the imaginal acts we've already impressed onto consciousness. In his words, an assumption, though false if persisted in, will harden into fact. This means the seeds of your future are not in the stars nor in fate, they're in your imagination. And when these seeds begin to sprout, they do so through symbols, through synchronicities. So what does that mean for you? It means that coincidences are never just coincidences. They are echoes of thoughts, emotions, and assumptions. You've planted deep within the fertile soil of your inner world. The universe responds not to what you want, but to what you believe to be true. And when your beliefs align with your desires, even unconsciously, the world begins to shift. The future doesn't appear all at once. It reveals itself in pieces, through subtle alignments, through strange recurring symbols, through impossible timings. If you learn to notice, you begin to understand. And when you understand, you awaken a power most never even realize they have. Your role isn't to chase the signs. Your role is to awaken the one creating them, and that one is you. So the next time something feels like a sign, like a moment, calling your attention, don't dismiss it, sit with it. Ask what inner state might have summoned this, what story you're unconsciously living out. Because the truth is, you are not reacting to life. You are dreaming it. And those coincidences, they're simply the universe whispering back. If life is a dream, then symbols are its alphabet. Neville Goddard often emphasized that the subconscious mind does not speak in words, it speaks in images, emotions, and metaphors. That's why symbols carry so much weight. A butterfly, a number, a feather on the ground, these are not coincidences. They are spiritual punctuation marks in the narrative of your awakening. Think about the last time you saw a repeated number, 1111 on the clock, or the same name showing up multiple times in a day. These aren't glitches in reality. They are invitations. The universe isn't outside of you, it's flowing through you, and it speaks when you start listening. Neville taught that imagination creates reality, but he never meant imagination as fantasy. He meant it as the creative force of life itself. Your imagination is the divine in motion, and what it imagines, consciously or not, takes form, first as an impression, then as a symbol, and finally as a physical experience. So when your inner world changes, your assumptions, your emotions, your states of being, your outer world begins to mirror that change. But before it becomes physical, it appears symbolically. That's how the future whispers its arrival. It's like hearing distant thunder before the storm appears on the horizon. These symbols aren't always grand. Most often, they're subtle. A dream, a phrase you overhear, a feeling that won't leave. The mistake people make is brushing them off. But in truth, these are the breadcrumbs that lead you back to yourself. Every symbol you encounter is tied to a state within you. That state may be conscious or unconscious, but it's alive. And once you understand how to decode that language, you'll no longer ask, why is this happening to me? Instead, you'll ask, what am I broadcasting that's drawing this in? Because every symbol is a mirror, and it's not reflecting the world, it's reflecting you. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore how to recognize, interpret, and intentionally respond to these messages. But first, we must remember this. Coincidence doesn't speak in logic, it speaks in meaning, and meaning is born from presence. Imagine this. Your future isn't waiting to happen. It's already happening in you, not in your calendar, not in the stars, but in your state of consciousness right now. Neville Goddard described this as living in the end. He taught that every future you can imagine already exists as a potential reality, and that your current state of being selects which version becomes visible. What we call the future is simply the unfolding of the state you occupy now. This is why signs appear before the big moments, not after, because you don't manifest from events, you manifest from states, and your dominant inner state acts like a projector, casting images onto the screen of your life. Let that sink in. Coincidences are evidence of where you are headed. They're not warnings, they're previews, a glimpse into the movie your subconscious has already queued up for you. When you begin to align with a new reality, whether it's a life of peace, abundance, love, or purpose, the universe responds immediately. Not always with physical change, but with symbolic confirmation, signs, synchronicities, surreal timing. The future is never out there. It's seeded within you. And as Neville often said, feeling is the secret. It's not about wishful thinking. It's about fully embodying the emotional tone of the future you desire as if it's already real. Because in the realm of consciousness, it is. That's why signs appear when your inner world begins to shift. They're saying, "Bow, you've moved timelines, you've entered a new state." And if you trust that, if you stay in that state, it begins to crystallize into form. So, when you see that coincidence, pause, feel, ask yourself, what am I being shown? What future have I stepped into? Because life is always speaking, but it's up to you to listen with the heart. When you begin to understand this, the world stops being chaotic, it becomes coherent, and your role shifts from victim into visionary. You are not walking toward your future, you are remembering it. Have you ever noticed how the outside world seems to know when your energy shifts? You feel more confident, and suddenly, opportunities appear. You let go of someone, and they text you days later. You change your beliefs, and life responds like a mirror adjusting its reflection. This is not magic, it's alignment. And Neville Goddard was one of the first modern mystics to explain this in profound clarity. Your world is yourself pushed out. Everything around you is mirroring. They're part of you, your beliefs, your fears, your expectations, your unconscious patterns. There is no separation between the inner and the outer. This is the principle of reflection. The world is a stage, and every player in your life is responding to the role you've assumed in your mind. This means when you change the role, you change the script. When you shift your inner assumptions, the mirror has no choice but to reflect differently. And guess what? The first sign that the reflection is shifting often comes in the form of synchronicity. Coincidences, glitches in the pattern. Something feels off yet meaningful. That's the signal the mirror is realigning. It hasn't fully changed yet, but the pieces are starting to rearrange. Neville taught that the world doesn't change by force. It changes by assumption. So if you want to alter your outer world, start by assuming the inner identity of the person who already lives that life. And here's the key. You don't need evidence to believe it. The belief is the evidence. And when you live from that belief, the signs will flood in. You'll notice strange alignments. Words will come to you in perfect timing. People will show up without explanation. You'll feel like life is conspiring, not randomly but intentionally, because it is. You're not watching the mirror, you are the mirror. So stop chasing. Signs instead become the source of the signs, and watch as reality can't help but respond. One of Neville Goddard's most misunderstood teachings is this: signs follow, they do not precede. In other words, signs are not your guidance system. They are confirmation that a shift has already occurred within. The moment you change your inner state, the universe begins to respond, but not always with instant results. First come the ripples, the symbols, the synchronicities, the intuitive nudges. These are the aftershocks of a new belief solidifying in consciousness. This is where most people get confused. They ask for a sign to decide what to believe, but Neville made it clear. Belief must come first. Faith must precede form. You assume the state before the world reflects it. So when you're waiting for life to show you something before you feel secure, loved, or abundant, you're doing it backwards. The key is to embody the feeling now, to live from the state you want, not towards it. And here's the beauty of it. Once you've genuinely shifted, life can't help but reflect that shift. That's when the signs appear, not to guide you but to confirm you. You'll hear the right phrase in a conversation. You'll stumble across a book or video that feels meant for you. You'll get a message or opportunity that aligns with your new path. These moments feel magical, but they're not miracles. They're feedback. This is why trusting the unseen is so important. The physical world is slow. It lags behind the spiritual change. The moment you plant the seed, it begins to grow, but the fruit takes time. The signs are the first leaves breaking through the soil, so don't obsess over what it means. Instead, check your state. Are you living from the version of you that's already there? Are you acting, thinking, and feeling like the future has already unfolded? Because the universe doesn't respond to your hopes. It responds to your frequency. And once that frequency becomes steady, the world will bend, not out of luck, not by accident, but as a perfect reflection of your inner alignment. That's not coincidence. That's conscious creation. Have you ever had a dream that came true, or a strange moment of déjà vu that left you wondering, have I seen this before? These aren't glitches, they are glimpses, fragments of a timeline your soul is already familiar with. Neville Goddard spoke of parallel realities long before it became a trend. To him, every possibility already exists, waiting for your consciousness to align with it. When you vividly imagine something, especially with feeling, you're not creating a future. You're tuning in to a version that already is. Your dream was not fantasy, it was contact, a preview, a moment where your inner world and the outer world briefly touched. And what about déjà vu? It's more than coincidence, it's resonance. A signal that you are walking a path your higher self already recognizes. It's your subconscious saying, yes, this is the right timeline. You felt this before because it's yours. These flashes of familiarity are not accidental. They're sacred. They show that time is not linear. It loops, overlaps, and bends around consciousness. And consciousness is you, the dreamer, the projector, the traveler between worlds. Neville taught that you are always moving through states, mental, emotional, and spiritual conditions that define your reality. Each state has its own events, people, and outcomes. Shift the state, and you shift the script. Remain in a state long enough, and the physical world begins to match it. That's why after a powerful visualization or a deep meditative experience, you might start to notice strange synchronicities, prophetic dreams, or odd repetitions. The future isn't coming, it's bleeding through. The signs aren't leading you blindly. They're reminding you of the future you've already touched, consciously or not. And if you pay attention to these dreams and moments of recognition, not with fear, but with reverence, you'll start to see the pattern, the divine logic behind the randomness, the thread connecting it all, because your destiny is not somewhere out there. It's already written in your soul's memory, and every time you recognize a piece of it, you reclaim it. What if everything you assume to be true about yourself, about life, about what's possible, is quietly building your future behind the scenes? Neville Goddard believed this to his core. In his teachings, assumption is not just a passive belief, it's a creative act. When you assume something, you give it life. You invite it to take shape, and the universe, like a perfect architect, begins constructing a reality to match that assumption. The catch: it doesn't care if the assumption is empowering or limiting. If you assume you're unlucky, unnoticed, undeserving, so be it. If you assume you're blessed, guided, abundant, so it is. This is why signs and coincidences often mirror what we've been assuming without realizing it. You might tell yourself you're a failure, and suddenly everything seems to confirm that. Or you begin assuming you are chosen for something greater, and suddenly the world starts bending to meet that idea. It's not the external proving the internal. It's the internal selecting the external. Here's the powerful truth Neville wanted us to know. You don't need to wait for life to validate you. You don't need proof, permission, or a sign to begin. The act of assumption is enough. When you assume a new identity, your world must shift. It may not happen overnight, but signs will appear, confirmation will surface. Synchronicities will align, not because the universe has changed its mind, but because you did. That's how you know the future is changing. You'll feel it first, then you'll see it. First internally, then symbolically, then physically. So, if you've been wondering why your signs haven't come, ask yourself, have you truly assumed the state of the one who already lives your desired reality? Are you thinking, walking, feeling, speaking from that version of yourself? If not, it's time to shift, not by force, but by decision. Because assumption isn't about pretending, it's about remembering who you really are. And once you return to that truth, life has no choice but to obey. That's not wishful thinking, that's law. There comes a moment in every seeker's journey when the question shifts. It's no longer, what is the universe trying to tell me? It becomes, what am I telling the universe? Neville Goddard taught something revolutionary, something that turns the traditional search for answers completely inside out. He didn't see the universe as a distant force sending random signs from above. He saw it as a living mirror, shaped by consciousness, waiting to reflect the images impressed upon it by you. So when signs appear, repeating numbers, perfectly timed messages, déjà vu, dreams, you must ask, what inner state gave birth to this? Because these signs are not predictions, they are reflections, echoes, the fruit of seeds you planted long ago in imagination, perhaps without even realizing it. The future is not given to you, you give it to yourself. Every day, in every moment, you are casting votes for a future reality. Through your thoughts, your assumptions, your emotional states, these inner energies form a vibrational pattern, an invisible template, and reality, like a loyal servant, begins to mold itself around it. This means your ability to read signs is only as strong as your ability to know yourself. Are you aware of the stories you tell silently in your mind? Do you know which emotions you dwell in when no one's watching? Do you feel the difference between forcing change and embodying it? Because the more you become aware of your inner world, the more you'll realize the outer world has always been listening. Every encounter is a mirror, every delay a teacher, every coincidence a confirmation. And once you truly see this, once you wake up to the fact that you're not a passive receiver of signs, but the originator of them, you'll stop doubting the flow of life. You'll stop chasing validation from the outside. You'll stop asking the universe to show you proof. Instead, you'll become the proof. You'll know when your future is arriving. Not because someone predicted it, not because a sign appeared, but because you already feel it. You've already lived it in imagination, and life is simply catching up. This is what it means to be the oracle of your own life. To remember that your imagination is sacred, that your assumptions are law, and that what you feel deeply and persistently must eventually take form, because consciousness is the only creative force in the universe. So stop waiting for someone to tell you where you're going. Close your eyes, feel it, live it, and then open your eyes. Watch the signs align. Watch the dream unfold. You are not here to read your future. You're here to declare it. So now we come full circle. What began as a question, was this just a coincidence, has transformed into a deeper realization. Coincidence was never real to begin with. Not in Neville Goddard's world, not in the awakened world, not in yours. Every sign you've ever received, every chance encounter, every déjà vu, every dream that felt too real, they weren't random. They were reminders, echoes of the future you've already chosen. And the more you recognize this, the more empowered you become. You stop waiting, you start intending, you stop hoping, you start imagining, you stop begging for signs, and start creating realities. This is what Neville meant when he said, man moves in a world that is nothing more or less than his consciousness objectified. When you shift your state, the world must follow. That's not philosophy, it's law. So, if today you're wondering what your future looks like, don't look ahead. Look within. Ask yourself, what state am I living in? What have I accepted as true? What version of me am I feeding with my imagination? Because the signs you receive tomorrow will be the result of the identity you embody today. The great secret is this: your future is not discovered. It's designed. And the blueprint isn't in the stars, it's in your awareness. You are not a passive character in someone else's divine plan. You are the author of your own divine path. And coincidence? It was just the mask your power wore until you remembered who you are. So the next time the universe speaks to you in symbols, don't ask, what does this mean? Ask, what within me called this forth? And you'll hear the answer. Not from outside you, but from deep within, where your true future has always lived. This is how your future is revealed. Not by prediction, but by recognition. You're not waiting for a sign. You are the sign, and that changes everything.